Hi everyone, welcome to Smart City Institute Japan's webinar series called Global Perspectives on Smart Cities. I'm your host, Taki Nagamo, Executive Director of Smart City Institute Japan. And before inviting today's distinct speakers, let me just tell you some housekeeping matters. So we'll encourage all the viewers to write comments, questions, and the messages to today's speaker. And when you write a message to the chat box, please choose all from the pull-down menu. That's the rule of this operation for everyone. Okay. And today's presentation title is Developing People-Centric Smart Townships with Digital Twins. And today's distinct speaker is Mr. Kok Chin Tay, also known as Mr. KC. So KC, please come in.
Thank you so much, Nagumo-san.
Hi, thank you for joining me. I'm so honored to have you today. And today you will talk about, Asians in smart city cases, Asians and Singapore cases and the digital twin, all exciting words. Everyone is already exciting about that. And so without further ado, I would like to have your presentation. So over to you.
Thank you so much. Allow me to share my screen. I hope everyone can see my screen, and I have called this a guest lecture, right? And I hope that after today you get an idea to what I meant about smart township with digital twins, with a focus on it being people-centric. So it is indeed my pleasure and honor to be invited by Smart City Institute Japan to share my views. And I hope, as you can see on the right side of the screen, is that I hope that this lecture could be a catalyst of the partnership between stakeholders in Japan and the smart cities in ASEAN, because I work very closely with many of the cities in ASEAN. So let me start with sharing the synopsis of this webinar and the lecture, right? It is a series of designing smart cities in the era of coexistence with COVID-19, and I do have a few slides on that. But what I would like to set the context is the development of digital twins, which is really an advanced level of the development of smart cities. And why is that so? It's because of the survey that was done by ESI Thoughtlab, which is actually based in Philadelphia in the US, of 167 cities. And they have found that among the technologies in their survey, digital twin has the largest increase in the next 3 years. So today's lecture is about the critical success factors. What are the things that makes such a development to be successful? What are the ingredients that will make it successful? So there'll be three main areas. It must be people-centric, it has to be modular, and thirdly, it has to be coordinated with an integrated operations center. So let me set the context of the survey, and this is exclusive to members of the ESI Thoughtlab, which is actually a membership. And that survey was actually sponsored by many of the large organizations. And they surveyed 167 cities across 82 countries, many of whom are decision makers. And it's a thought leadership survey reaching up to decision makers. And to set the context, I'm actually in their Asia Advisory Board as the chairman for Smart Cities Network. So let me go through the area of focus. Why? So you can see that that they have noted amongst the investment in the next 3 years, like digital twin, 3D printing, data warehouse, the digital twin has the largest increase at 282%, which is very high. So what I hope to do and achieve in this seminar is as follows. And it should be very simple because I like to keep things simple. First, the critical success factor is that you must have certain awareness. What is it about? And why do you want to do it? Secondly, you want to build because you know it's important. What is it that you need to build? Well, data and people. And how would you do it? And thirdly, and I think the most important success factor is commitment. Who should get involved? And once you know who should get involved, how to start. So I hope in this next 30 minutes or so, I will actually touch on each of these areas, which is A, B, and C. So let's start with A. What is a digital twin? Right? Digital twins are nothing more than a virtual representation or a digital representation of a replica of the physical city. So I like to highlight the important characteristics. It is digitally accurate. It is of high resolution. It covers an area. It contains useful data. So the last 2 points is where it differentiates from many of the master planners and the architects who would actually come out with a design of a particular development they intend to do, the fly-through, to give people the 3D visualization of the development. But generally, those master planners are really conceptual to let the developers and the owners to have a look at what it's going to look like. But in the case of a digital twin, it is about data, about developing what I call use cases. So let me share a few examples of that. First, let's start with Singapore. A few years ago, Singapore government announced the development of the virtual Singapore, over 70 million Singapore dollars. And why? Well, the plan and the intent is to develop the 3D model to provide it as a collaborative data platform. And that includes the digital maps. So it should be an authoritative digital platform. Virtual Singapore is the front end, but underlying it is the data. And that's why the data is what I would call the use cases. It enables users from different sectors to develop tools, application for test bidding. It helps in decision making because you have a 3D view of the area of the building. It helps you to plan. And also it helps you to research into new technologies on how to solve a complex problem. So that's the Singapore case. On the other side, in Northern Europe, Helsinki, right, has a digital twin for many years. They have the city models for many years. And what they have done is that they have done an exact replica of the city, right? Highly accurate digital twin of the city. So it is not any city survey or just to show the city that the buildings are there. And these are the use case. The use case is that the city, the high resolution, highly accurate digital twin can help them to collaborate across multiple functions of the city. And this is very fundamental for digital twins. It allows the different stakeholders, whether within a city or within the corporations, a large corporation, to make use of the model. And in this case, in Helsinki, they talk about education and social services. But broadly speaking, it should help them to solve universal urban problems. Because with the replica and complemented with CCTVs to see real-time streaming of the actual situation on the ground, you can manage the situation a lot better, real time. Because a digital twin is a snapshot at a particular time. But if you complement it with a CCTV, you know on-site. And better still, with the ability for users and the residents to transmit data. And that data is then mapped onto the digital twin. And that's real engagement with the resident. And the third example I will show is in Germany. So why are they doing? And a digital twin in general has got to have a large monitor to show the model of the city. And that model will allow the different stakeholders again. And in this case, the use case is that it allows them to collaborate and communicate among stakeholders for decision making. So I hope with these three examples in Singapore, Helsinki, and in Nuremberg, Germany, one would get an idea about what is a digital twin and why is it important. So let me go on to the second part, which is about why do we want to bother, right? How do you build a digital twin? So then the question goes into what is the value of a digital twin? So people may or may not be familiar with this. This is oil field Marjan in Saudi Arabia. Very coincidentally, I was involved in this particular customer, Aramco, Arabian American Oil Company, because when I started my career as a geophysical engineer, I was contracted to Aramco back in the 80s. So when you look at this oil field underground, the value is about oil. Where are the oil tracks, the anticline? So today we say the digital twin, the value is about the data. And it's not different from what the oil is about, because the data of the anticline where the oil is tracked is where the value is. So over here, we have the term data is the new oil. And let me go through how it started. The phrase data is the new oil can be found in Wikipedia. It's as follows. It was coined many years ago, 15 years ago, to say that data is valuable, yes, but if unrefined, it cannot be used. So data has to be broken down and analyzed for it to be of value. And that's why we analyze data, or sometimes we refer it as big data, data sets by the government. So how do we get the data? And this is the sharing of, and I would recommend for you to listen to this TED Talk by the mayor of Rio de Janeiro. It's many years ago, 9 years ago, and it's on TED. Is publicly available. So he gave a talk on the 4 commandments of cities. And in that, the 4th commandment is about the city of the future has to use technology to be present. And at that time, of course, IBM supported them as part of the Smarter Planet. And I was with IBM then. And I was involved with the Smarter City Challenge project with the Singapore government. And in 2014, 2 years later, when the Singapore Prime Minister then, and still is, PM Lee Hsien Loong, at the National Day rally announced the Smart Nation, he showed the Rio de Janeiro Operations Center. So a smart city of the future needs to have data, and that data is analyzed, captured, processed, and reviewed so that we use technology to collect data. And if you listen to this TED Talk, you will see the different examples of the CCTV to see the traffic condition and the mobility of the different garbage trucks collecting waste from the city. So the second part of building is about data is recently announced in just last week on the 9th of September, right? And beyond data and building, the Singapore government is announced about the virtual twins of the land and sea to monitor activities. So they're capturing data of the seabed, the status of the desalination plants, and the marine water quality. So you can see that this is again about data collection by the Maritime and Port Authority of Singapore, and that has been since 2019. And that digital twin, a virtual twin, is called Geospace C, to map out and present data in 2D and 3D. So besides data, you need to have people. And I think this is probably the hardest challenge for a lot of cities around the world, in that you need to build capabilities and capacities of the leaders. And I was invited by the ASEAN Secretariat together with the Economic Research Institute of Asia and ASEAN to speak in Bangkok when Thailand was the chair. And my topic then was about enabling smart cities in ASEAN. And I spoke about the two critical success factors. It's about political leadership and funding, which is really what I will share again today. And 2 years later, almost 2 years later, on the 6th of July, about 3 months ago, I again worked with the ASEAN Secretariat to actually talk about digital twin, right? Because of the survey done by ESI Thoughtlab. But it is about digital twin connecting cities, which is an area that I think holds potential for us to collaborate between cities. So in that event, it's a partnership with the ASEAN Secretariat, and that's the opportunity and of course an offer to listeners here to be able to know that it is possible to work with the ASEAN Secretariat, and I can connect that to say, you know, what is a digital twin and why is it gaining popular. And in that event, it's a 2-hour event. I had the ASEAN Secretariat, Mr. Lim Soo Chim, who actually gave the welcome. And an example kind of engagement is that I actually did capacity building for Iskandar, which is in Johor, together with Puan Maimuna, who is the Chief Smart City Officer for Johor Bahru, which is the structure of the ASEAN Smart Cities Network. But of course, in any event, I have examples from in that particular workshop, sharing by Dr. Teo Ho Ping, the ex-mayor of Northwest Community Development Council in Singapore, and also the 2 mayors from the Philippines, Mayor Jack Soriano and Mayor Bernard Faustino D. So let me share with you the framework that I do use today in Singapore. First, when we plan to develop smart cities, there's a 3-step framework. It's a framework that was provided by the Infocom Media Development Authority of Singapore. And I like the acronym to that framework. It's ACT, ACONET, right? Accelerate, to digitalize industry, to compete, and also to transform. So what does that mean, right? So it means that when we actually digitalize, we transform the industry with the academia, right? Transform the cities. So the way that we do it is that we say it's a digital twin with the Internet of Things, data, and artificial intelligence. Secondly, we need to have the command center or the operations center to look at the data, to then post the digital twin onto the command center. And thirdly, is to develop the platform economy, the ecosystem. It must be sustainable, and to be sustainable, it has to have an ecosystem. So that's how I do that now in Singapore with a lot of different project teams. Even currently with the different universities like NUS since last year, and now very active with BCA Academy, the Singapore Institute of Technology, and NTU, as well as the SUSS. And all this boils down to the capacity building of people, developing future leaders for the country. And that includes the Singapore Management University. So An example of this particular project, the digital twin of the Tampines Round Market with the town council people are managed by EM Services. I'm laying the foundation with support of the town council for an integrated township. And that integrated township will be with the availability of this high resolution digital twin developed by a startup called Graphico, based out of Singapore and presence in Kuala Lumpur. And what do? We facilitate the students to develop use cases. Use case as what I shared earlier in the smart city, but use case for the building. And this is an ongoing project with Nanyang Technological University, as well as the Singapore Institute of Technology, where we're going to try to use this 3D model to provide recommendation for this round market to pursue green mark. So this is just an example of the use of a digital twin. And next, another example of development of future leaders is this collaboration that we started last year with Georgetown University in Washington, DC. They have a program, a master's program that they call it Global Business Experience. So I started end of last year, and the program ran from January to April this year as a first run. And in August, last month, Professor Michael Ryan, who coordinates that program, wrote to me, and he's very happy to say that the Global Business Experience Singapore was very popular with students and the deans. Now he put it very, right? So I'm quite happy to say that I'm extending that partnership again with a session in October next month, information session to invite interested Singapore companies to join us and have project teams from their master's program to be attached to them from January to April next year. So the framework of how we will collaborate is as follows. I chair the Smart Cities Network, and I have a youth network. And the youth network is that we invite participating companies and organizations. It could be a nonprofit. And we hope to invite innovative global and Japanese companies and European companies to come on board to participate. And what do we need to do is that we got to define problem statements, define the scope for the project teams so that Singapore students from academic institutions, as well as students from overseas. And I have a project team in Vietnam at the moment from FPT University, who is probably on the call here, doing a project together with a Singapore student from NTU. And this is my wish, that we hope to have project teams from Japan to then work with us and potentially to identify problems that we can mutually agree. So I'll come to how do we identify it to be people-centric? And the methodology is quite known around the world in smart cities development. It's called design thinking. I have 4 project teams at NTU now working to address the environment services industry transformation map. And they are from the design thinking class. So what we have is that we will apply design thinking to the project sites, and we do industry transformation. So the process is quite straightforward for many of us practitioners who understand design thinking 101. It starts with empathy, right? And is to understand. Second is to explore what is it that we can do. And thirdly is to materialize with a pilot project. So the approach is that we want people to understand the people. When you do citizen engagement, you do resident engagement, when you do cleaning, you got to talk to the people on site, on the ground. And with that, we will then scope the project for the team to identify the problems, and then thereafter come up with ideas on how to solve it, and at least come up with a prototype. So that is the process that I do now with the project teams at NTU. And we started that, in fact, yesterday I hosted them at the Changi Village Hawker Center, and we talked to the chairman of the Hawker Association together with their cleaning contractor to understand about cleaning. So the second part of the last part of the commitment, and I think it goes without saying, right? Commitment involves the ability to allocate budgets. And the Singapore government, thankfully, our government, the Singapore government, having experienced and understood the meaning of a smart nation over the last 6 to 7 years. Now, it goes without saying that they will allocate budgets to do smart nation projects. And this is just for 2021, but they have allocated huge budget, 24 billion Singapore dollars in the next 3 years. And within this particular article, Deputy Prime Minister Heng Swee Keat talks about collaborating with the ASEAN Smart Cities Network. So a commitment also means that we need to have a goal in mind, right? What is it that we want to achieve? So, and this is also to be people-centric. People-centric not only to society at large, improving the quality of life, but people-centric meaning the business community and also about the environment. So I think our goal with this ASEAN Smart Cities Network is to achieve this strategic outcome. And the first question that we want to ask the cities is that what are the city problems that you are trying to solve? And the approach that I shared in the synopsis is quite straightforward, is that you have to not try to do all at the same time, but you've got to be modular. In other words, let's start perhaps with the built environment, the digital infrastructure, right? Building and construction, the built environment, the built infrastructure. And then you may want to consider the industry academia collaboration with the industry and innovation. We start with these two, and then let the students come up with ideas to address healthcare, for civil society, for environment, the waste management, safety and security, and all these different pillars. So the enablers are, you need to find partners, you need to have funding, allocation of budget, and the city government would have budgets. So what we have is that these are the enablers, the partnership and funding, the digital infrastructure and applications to support all these pillars will be key. So I just want to give a snapshot to that survey that I talked about earlier, the ESI Thoughtlab survey, and specific to Japan and Singapore. Please note that in the chart, they have here to say in the cities that was evaluated, there are some with SDG department, because the ESI Thoughtlab is very aligned to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. So you may want to note here, right? I have put in a few cities in Japan in red and Singapore in blue. I know Singapore flag is red as well, but I don't want to confuse people, so I put blue. And Fukuoka is an example, as a SDG progress is an advancer, and they have an SDG department. Osaka too, they are a leader when it comes to SDG. And likewise is Japan and Singapore, right? Singapore announced the green plan, but essentially you need to have an SDG department who will then match the performance indicator and what is the maturity of it as a city, as a smart city. So Tokyo, Osaka, Toyama, and Fukuoka are the leaders in Japan. But I come to a very important area of need in Asia. And I have to say, not many people realize that Asia is probably the worst region in the world when it comes to disasters. Over the last 20 years, 927 billion of loss because of disasters. So in here, I'm working on a project, and Southeast Asia is the worst. So I'm working on a project with 2 cities in the Philippines. I believe they are on this call today. I've invited them, and we are doing a pilot project to really build capacity and capabilities of the cities to address and minimize the impact of natural disasters. So it is a region that was identified by the Department of Science and Technology, Region 2, the Cagayan Valley, and there are 2 cities that I work very closely with, right? And this demonstrates the commitment of the mayors. And the 2 mayors are Mayor Bernard from Kawayan City and Mayor Jeff Soriano from Tugugaro City. So I applaud their commitment, and I've known Mayor Bernard for over 2 years now, coming to 3 years. In fact, it's over 3 years. We met in August 2018. So any relationship takes time to develop. And now this year, they announced the Cagayan Valley Smarter City Belt, and in March. So we are conducting a workshop with the 2 mayors' support, right, from September, end of September. So I introduced them to the Resilient Cities Network, and they have been invited to join this global network. So network to me is so important. 100 cities of the Resilient Cities Network, over 100 cities. They were started with the Rockefeller Foundation, 100 cities, but now expanded into more cities now. So I come to the last few slides about the COVID situation. And I was on the call with the ASEAN event with on natural disasters. And I was really saddened by the number of deaths because of COVID. And I like to highlight this in this particular webinar as well. And this is as of Sunday when I prepare for my slides. In Japan, over 2,600 deaths in Tokyo. In Singapore, as of Sunday, 58. But in Japan as a country and ASEAN, I think we have to look into the situation seriously. When we look at Japan, Tokyo may have 2,600 over, but Japan overall has 16,000 over. But it has a population of 126,000. But if you compare that, for example, with Indonesia, twice the number of population, or more than twice, but the number is huge. And overall in ASEAN, we have 242,000 as of Sunday. That's wow. I started to track COVID numbers since last year. In March, we had 16,000 deaths worldwide. Hardly any, many in ASEAN. That was in March, 18 months ago. But now we have 240,000. Wow, huge. So this is, I shared that in March, and I have my contact at the West Java, who shared how they are planning it. It's a situation awareness, and this is the phase 1 of any digital twin. You need to have situational awareness of the cities. So West Java has a population of 49 million. And we spoke then that to say that they have to have effective communication to locate the spread of COVID-19 in the province. And I'm happy to say that when I spoke to Pak Sejaji again recently, and he has been appointed to be the head of healthcare transformation by the Indonesian Ministry of Health. So I think what he has done is certainly an example of what we can do in the region. So let me sort of wrap up with this last item. How do you start? So the first thing that I think any city or any large organization, if you want to start anything smart, right, on top of the digital economy, is to form a task force. So I'm happy to say that, you know, together with Tatsan, we are looking at how we want to explore collaboration between Smart City Institute Japan and Smart Cities Network. And with that, we need to have the local and national government to support this, together with academia, the academic institution if needed. But there has to be some kind of a budget. And third, but not least, do reach out to us, and we do pilot projects together, whether in Japan, in Singapore, or in ASEAN. It is something that we can work together. So I would like to conclude how I started with the concluding remarks. As a wrap up to this particular guest lecture is ABC. So I like to keep things simple. I've covered awareness about what is a digital twin and why do we want to do it through the use case. Secondly, the imperative to build data, to collect data, and also to have people develop so that they understand about smart cities. And how would you do it? The ABC, which is the act, right, to digitalize the city first, to compete and to transform. Last but not least is the commitment. You need to get your mayors, you need to get your top CEO, the chairman involved. And to start, you form a team. And from that team, you'll be able to then move on and scope projects. So with that, I'd like to sort of stop my share now and invite Smart City Institute to perhaps facilitate the question and answer. Back to you, Tak.
Thank you, Casey. Excellent presentation, and that was so easy to understand. I think your message has been delivered to audiences watching this webinar right now. Thank you very much. And now we are gearing up to discussion mode. And for the audiences, we'd like to encourage all of you to ask questions, make comments to Casey. This is a very important occasion. So feel free to make any comments through the chat box, okay? All right, then to get some input from the audiences, I will open up the discussion with you, Casey. So the first question is that, how easy is it to use digital twin? You know, it is well-known buzzword right now, and everyone is talking about digital twin. In Japan, we have a project sponsored by the Emirate, one of the ministries, called Project Plateau. That's the application of the digital twin technologies to over 56 cities in Japan, plus 23 wards in Tokyo metropolitan area. So we are at the genesis of actually start using the digital twin technology to solve social issues. But you know, question might be from just audience in general: how easy is it, or how difficult is it to use?
Okay, so it really depends on the complexities of the digital twin, right? The Singapore government has got the Singapore Land Authority, and they started their digital twin program several years ago, and I met with the director in charge. So extensive, right? So if you say very sophisticated digital twin, you fly helicopter and drone. So the first and foremost is that how accurate do you want the digital twin to be? Number one, what's a high resolution? Number two, what kind of a data you want to collect? And that's why I started with use cases. What kind of a data? And I showed the example that was published last week in the article. So I would say that it can be very simple. We did the project in the Philippines at Kawayan City last year with Graphico. We actually, because of COVID, we can't fly to Philippines. We taught the drone team in Kawayan City how to fly the drone in a certain manner. And it's drone photogrammetry, right? And high resolution photographs, thousands captured. We process it. So within 2 months, we can create a digital twin of an area. So it depends on the area. Within 1 to 2 months, after you have captured using the drone in a certain manner, you can actually have the data of the twin of the city, of the land area, of the river bank. And that's only the digital twin. What I think will be the challenging part is the data that you want to embed. So that will take time. What is the data or the assets that you want to capture? That will take time. So let's say right now I'm working with a startup in Singapore, Chi Square. Chi Square has captured data of the energy usage of thousands of buildings that was uploaded by BCA, the Building and Construction Authority. So usually the collection of data takes time. The digital twin as a shell can be done easily with now with latest technology within 2 months, 3 months, quite easily. I hope that answers your question.
All right, thank you very much. And second question from myself. Okay, so now we assume that we have some idea about the digital twin technologies and the usage. And then the starting point of the project is always identifying what issues you want to solve. Without social issues, there's no point to apply the technology, including digital twins, right? And then you mentioned about the modularity. That's, I think, is well connected to the identifying which issues you want to solve. You know, if the issue is too big, you know, it can be divided into multiple, you know, subsidiaries of issues. So you have to, you know, cut and slice the issues into the bite size, just so you can actually bite and chew, right? So, you know, could you talk a little bit about the choosing or defining the good question for, you know, to solve with the digital technologies?
Okay, so right now, I as I said earlier, I'm currently doing a design thinking project with NTU students, and the challenge for them is to transform issues. So my current involvement with digital twin is for the built environment. So I teach at BCA Academy, and I teach BIM for FM, Building Information Model for Facility Management. So Revit, for example, or Autodesk Revit, I export that 3D model into usable 3D model into another platform like Ecodomus. I'm the director for Ecodomus, and then use that to develop use case for facilities management. So the project with NTU, which we visited the site, they want to challenge 3 areas. And this is the National Environment Agency. They want to transform the environment services, right, on the hawker center. So we focus on hawker center. What are the issues? Well, the issues at the hawker center, we have 3 areas. First, waste management. So we want to tackle waste management because by and large, Singapore has not got a very great track record when it comes to waste, right? Not like Japan or Taiwan, you know, very health and very recycling conscious citizen. We're not so. So waste is an issue. Second is about cleaning, right? Cleaning of the hawker areas and how do they clean, and maybe the toilets, you know, and the third area is about pest management. In the hawker center, if you have been to Singapore, sometimes you do get birds. Birds come in and fly into the hawker center. So that's the current challenge, right? And the challenge is today, when the cleaning contractors say the challenge is they lack manpower. But then they lack manpower. They need to know how to solve the problem. So we're going to use CCTV to check on areas where cleaning needs to take place, and then send the information of where exact location where cleaning has to be done to actually to the right people to then clean the place. And we may want to use robots, cleaning robots to clean the place. So these are just some of the things, because in my opinion, when you solve a problem, it must deliver certain value, that you get a job done, that you are able to achieve a certain objective, whether reducing manpower, you improve. So another use case is about energy efficiency. So when we have the 3D model of the building and with, for example, we can monitor the energy usage of buildings, and to say that if I have traditional monthly collection of the data of the electricity bill, after I put LED lighting, how much energy do I save? That's one. Secondly, if I put a sensor at certain areas of the location of the building, the digital twin, I will switch off or put it to low light. I could save 40 to 50% of energy. So I think that's a measurable KPI. So the most important thing in digital twin is that what is it that delivers value to the right stakeholders?
I see. Thank you very much. And the last question from myself. So assuming that we learned about the digital twin, and then we identified the issues we would like to solve, and then we form the team and apply design thinking approaches and so forth. And the most critical part in the journey of this, the project is the funding, usually funding, right? So funding source could be local government, national government, maybe university or local business, a big business. So what's a typical funding source you'd like to go first?
Well, that's why, frankly speaking, that's why I start with academic institutions, working with industry partners. Because when I actually integrate the student projects, I don't have to pay. So I think the easiest route is that when there's no additional cost involved, you provide opportunities. It's a win-win, right? Because the students get exposed to real problems and they learn, and there's no cost involved. That's one approach, and that's usually my preferred approach. The second approach is about funding that the local government is prepared to invest through prototypes and innovation grants. It's a lot easier in Singapore, right? The Singapore government has got different kinds of grants offered to different agencies. Our Singapore Fund, the SME Fund and grants, usually co-funded model. So I think the challenge is to actually encourage more people to apply for those funding. There's so much money in Singapore, right? So we don't have enough people applying for those grants. And technically, the last route is usually through the standard procurement process, that the government would say that I do need to put in, and my Philippine friends at the LGU, the local government unit, funded their command center. And sometimes they do get grants from the World Bank and Asian Development Bank. And sometimes they do get money from the foundations as part of the CSR. So I think the funding part has to be worked on, but to get those and apply for those funding, you must have a defined scope of project that delivers the value. Otherwise, why would people fund?
I see. I understand that there are multiple sources of funding depending upon, what kind of problem solving you would like to try. And nevertheless, I think it's recommendable for students to first learn and try the problem solving with technologies. Maybe, it's a student, the try, so you can still make mistakes and learn from the mistakes, right? And then you can elevate it to a more sophisticated level where government grants or the more bigger funds can be granted. All right, thank you very much. All right, so Casey, let's move on to the questions from the audiences. I will read them for you. First one from Kono-san. Hi, Casey, this is Michi Kono. Nice listening to your lecture. My comment and questions are as follows. Whenever I hear Japanese experts on smart cities saying that Singapore is the model, I tell them that it's impossible for other countries to imitate Singapore because of the difference of the political governances. Singapore is known for strong leadership of the government and for the diligence of ministry officials, which cannot compare with other countries except for Israel. As a lead of Smart City Council for ASEAN, you may have found the difficulties in transferring Singaporean systems to other ASEAN states. And I wonder if you are building tactics or magic to guide Asian countries with lazier governments to develop smart city based on the ideas of Singapore. So, it's always an issue. You cannot copy the exact same model to different countries. So how can you manage the differences? That's a question.
Well, thanks, Michi Kono-san. I do know him, by the way. So, and so I do agree with you that you cannot take lock, stock, barrel of the Singapore model to other ASEAN countries. And I have had the experience of working with the ASEAN countries and also met with many of them. And in so far, my experience has been that we got to build the capabilities of the stakeholders. So far, and I have to tell you very honestly, right? So far, my experience with the cities and the government level is that that it's very difficult to navigate the political maze of the other ASEAN countries. Very difficult, except for those that I'm working on now, where I get the commitment of the mayors, for example. And for example, now, even if I do know the head of a certain government department in another country, but the other divisions will have difficulty trying to sort of work with each other. So the interagency challenge is still a hurdle for a lot of the ASEAN countries. And by the way, it's no different from Singapore. I know that a lot of people have a lot of respect to the Singapore strong leadership. When PM Lee announced Smart Nation in 2014, remember that at that time, it was parked under the Infocom Media Development Authority, under IDA. It is not until May 2017, more than 2 years later, that the Smart Nation Digital Government Group was formed. And that's where a lot of things are coordinated through the SN Digital Government Group, which consists of GovTech and the Smart Nation Digital Government Office that liaises with the private sector and the society. So GovTech now, for example, for COVID, they develop contact tracing, Safe Together. And all those things are done by GovTech, coordinated. So Singapore also got to learn the hard way, right? And you're right. The strong leadership and the way that the society works is that it's a rather compliant society. So in a way, other societies may not be so compliant, right? And that's why the challenge is difficult. And my takeaway from this is that to work in the other ASEAN countries, my view is that you have to work with the local partners who understand the political maze of the politics of that country. And they will then be able, and it may take a longer time, but because as long as you are above board, you are clear and transparent, I think that's how I would suggest that we will work with the other ASEAN cities. So that will be my comment on that first question, Tat.
Thank you very much. And it's been said that the Asian countries or Asian region is not one country. It's a collection of different countries with different background, different political economic regime, and so forth. And everyone, I think, is moving towards smart city implementation, which is a good news. But having said, which countries in Asian region do you recommend for the Japanese business to enter into?
I would recommend Indonesia
Mm.
for the fact that it's a population of over 200 million, and they have a very dynamic society, and so it's the market in itself is really huge, and at the top of my head is really Indonesia because it's growing so fast. So I would recommend Indonesia as number one. And my second recommendation would be Vietnam. Because they are very open to receiving and collaborating with outsiders, and so Vietnam will be my second choice. And it's still a sizable population of over 90 million, right? So not small. Singapore is too small. At best, I think you can have Singapore as a test bed, as your headquarters. But when you really want to work, you got to really expand into Indonesia and Vietnam. But I would say do not exclude Philippines as well, because it's a very big market, but it's very localized. My experience is they work among themselves. So that's why I'm testing the model in the northern region, and I have found the mayors to be very open. So I like to make sure that can scale. And of course, equally, other countries like Malaysia. I mean, I was from Malaysia, so they are very capable people. I think so, and likewise for Thailand, right? So the 6 major economies will be my best bet.
I see. I personally is interested in sustainable smart town Tenga in Singapore. Do you know that? Sustainable smart town Tenga.
Sorry, I didn't get the last part. Tenga?
Tenga.
Yeah. No.
Tengah.
Oh, Tengah. Oh, it's pronounced Tengah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. There's 40,000 population. They is the second mixed use residential by Housing Development Board after Punggol Digital District. Punggol Digital District is up north, and this is towards the northwest of Singapore. Yes, and yeah, they're doing cooling district at a mega scale. So they are really testing new ideas over there. Very exciting. That's why Singapore, in my view, is an exciting city.
Yes, yeah. Today and during the daytime, I was moderating one of the sessions at the APEC conference on smart cities, and the Tenga was one of the cases presented. It was so interesting. Thank you very much. Okay, let's go back to the question from the audience. Mr. Sakamoto. Sorry for a rudimentary question. Are smart cities acceptable in Asian countries other than Singapore? In my understanding, Singapore is the most advanced country when it comes to smart city, but many other Asian countries are not advanced. From the government of view, they want to solve social issues they have by developing smart cities. However, from the citizens' point of view, every price is higher in smart cities than just township developments because they implement various kinds of systems to analyze data. Citizens of developing countries seem to want to live in affordable cities, like just large-scale cities. That's why I'm asking. That's why I asked this question. Would you please tell me if there are differences in the way citizens think about smart cities in different countries?
So specific to the first question, right? Are smart cities acceptable in ASEAN countries other than Singapore? I would say that at the government level, in 2018, the Singapore government, when they were chair, they announced the ASEAN Smart Cities Network, consisting of 26 cities.
Yeah.
So every time ASEAN meets, there will be workshops to build capabilities and capacities of the representatives from these 26 cities. So, and Singapore was nominated in 2019 to be the shepherd, right? So I think for 2 years. So next year, Cambodia will be chair. This year is Brunei. So smart cities has been accepted at the political level, right? So I would like to emphasize political level. But at the ground level, people in ASEAN in general needs to make sure that the digital infrastructure is ready, right? To do smart cities, you must have the digital infrastructure. I was conducting the workshop for Sarawak in December 2018. They have a smart city. More and more cities are developing their smart cities roadmap, strategic roadmap. So, and sometimes they call it the digital economy. So Thailand through DIPA has that, the digital economy, and the Malaysians, they have the digital economy. So some people use digital economy as a smart economy, but there's a slight difference. Digital means going digital is an enabler for you to have access to a network. When it comes to smart, usually I would like to include 2 areas. Smart means the ability to capture data with a sensor network. It has to be data focused. Second, smart is that it must have an ability to analyze the data. So that's why a digital economy is not a smart economy. So in general, I have to say that the citizens in other countries, I think they do understand the need to go smart because it's been around for the last few years. And I've been involved in this since my days in 2010 with IBM, right? So over 10 years. So more and more citizens in ASEAN do understand smart. But the way they look at smart, they think it's the government's job. But I beg to differ. You see, I think smart involves citizens. And that's where I agree to say that there's a difference in the view of the citizen. So, and that's why I had the title of my talk, People-Centric. It must involve citizens. I hope that answers the question.
Right, and maybe a follow-up question on this. There are some issues of the gentrification when it comes to large-scale development. It doesn't need to be always related to smart cities, but when it comes to large-scale development of the city kicks in, then the certain areas in question will be developed by the big capital. Thereby, the landscape will skyrockets, and the price of the commodities in the area will go up. The original residents cannot afford living in the place because of the price, level going up. So gentrification is occurring, even without the application of the digital technologies. But certainly, smart city building can accelerate gentrification, if not properly taken care of. Is that happening in Asian countries as well?
That the property prices go up because it's a smart city, it's a smart development?
It doesn't need to be smart cities, but these under the name of the smart cities, large developer comes into the site and they invest huge amount of money to make big buildings, and big train stations and the big restaurants for entertainment. So city changes from the rural to big urban area. As a result of that, the land price go up, and the people living in the area cannot afford a living because of the price, right? So that's called gentrification. And sometimes that occurs in the lot of places in Europe, for example. And after that kind of experience, they started to rebalance between the community and the capital, the economy, and they have to redo all the city making. So I was wondering if that kind of tendencies are also happening in Asian countries.
No, I think a good example of that is actually in Korea. You may have heard of the city called Sondo, right? So very high tech and a lot of investment, the big buildings, and there are a few others, right? I'm sure China has got 500 cities that are touted smart, right? So it's all over Asia now, right? So I think. And that's why I think the ESI Thoughtlab, the trend is there that a lot of city officials are beginning to realize that developing a situation awareness through a digital twin will be the way to go in the next 3 years. And correspondingly, for the private sector, when they build a large development, an ability to have sensing on the ground, right, with a digital twin or through a geolocation capability is the way to go. And because to enable that, you need to have the digital infrastructure, whether it's fiber optics or 5G, and that incur investment. So I think it goes hand in hand with the cost. And likewise, it will be higher price. So I think this is a very normal progression of cost of the property versus the development of the smart, right?
Right. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. So in the interest of time, 2 more questions then to finish, right? So Oki-san, I'm wondering how it works. Is it just like the CAD program? Can you even visualize a proposed project in its entirety of the city by introducing change factors of the simulation model once the twin city is developed? While the physical part of the project introduced can be visualized and analyzed with the model, how the wishes by the citizens present as well as future are reflected with the model? A little bit complicated question.
So the question was referring to how the digital twin works.
Yeah.
And when the reference to AutoCAD, I assume is AutoCAD to say visualize a project in 3D model and to have simulation. And well, today the digital twin is largely in the purview of the management or the city owners today, right? The citizens today are mostly 2D based and some 3D now. Let's say, I'm sure you may have heard of the mobility app called Waze, W-A-Z-E, right? And in Singapore, we have the different app for buses and it tracks. So it's very similar to how that works. If you are in the car and you use Waze, which is an app to guide you to where you need to go, you have a GPS-enabled app that will allow you to know where you are and give you information about roadworks. So all this data is pumped in through different sources. And how that works is that a digital twin has got a 3-dimensional perspective on top of the 2D perspective, because it must capture data real time and also an ability to interact with the model. Today, most apps are one way. The app tells you what to do. But in time to come, an ability for residents to interact, and I think that's been done in Indonesia now, right? They publish information and go to the command center of the city government. I visited 3 cities, Jakarta, Semarang, and Bandung, right? And Bandung is where Pastor Jaji and his team showed me how they connect to the satellite cities. So the citizens actually send information from the other cities, right? And that's really eye-opening, because now the city and the government can interact with the citizens. And they're even using social media. And there's a pilot project in Indonesia, in Jakarta, about floods. So they are able to get the citizen feedback through social media. So it's a fast evolving and kind of adoption now of whether 2D and 3D will come very soon in the next 2 to 3 years. And sooner or later, with very high and a kind of a mobile app, you will be able to look at information about the building and things like that. We are not seeing that a lot these days, but I'm quite sure in the next few years, as the power of the phone and the PC and the laptop become faster, it will enable 3D visualization. So digital twin will become mainstream, at least in the next 3 to 5 years. That will be my prediction.
Okay, thank you very much. The last question from Tian Tron. Thank you, Mr. Casey, for your lecture today. In your experience, how long will the digital twins project benefits outweigh its initial investment? And what metrics will need to be evaluated to achieve the above statement? It maybe depends, but
yeah, once you have the 3D visualization platform, it has to be constantly updated, and the initial investment will not be a lot. It's just like the initial. It's the same thing that when I teach Smart FM, right? A building may cost, let's say, 100 million to build, right? An area, 100 million. The operating, and that is usually about 20% of the total cost of the building for the next 40 to 50 years. And this is the kind of a, discussion areas that I discuss with my students, to say that if you don't have the 3D visualization platform, can you manage the building? Yes, of course. But for the next 40 to 50 years in the life cycle of the building, you have no 3D visualization. That it will cost you X amount. So technically, I think within 3 to 5 years after investment of the initial investment for digital twin, you would have, through cost savings, through other productivity improvement, you would have recouped your investment for the digital twin within 3 to 5 years. I would safely say, if you implement the KPI and the processes correctly.
Okay, thank you very much, Casey. I think we are closing up this seminar because of the time constraints. Thank you very much for your excellent presentation and also sharing a lot of experiences across Asian countries and nice ideas about the collaboration between Japan and the Asian countries on the topics of the smart cities. And I think your message have been delivered to the audience today. Again, thank you very much. Maybe last word from you.
Well, I really do hope that we do not stay at the seminar level, and we welcome for others to write to Smart City Institute Japan. And once again, I thank you, arigato gozaimasu, to you and Kudo-san and my friend Tatsuya for linking us up. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. This concludes today's webinar.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Kudo-san.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Yes. Bye-bye. Thank you. And also, before you go, I'd like to talk a little bit about ourselves, the Smart City Institute Japan. And let me just here. So thank you for viewing today. And I think the Casey-san's presentation was very passionate, and we learned a lot from him. And the programs of the webinars, including today, will be available on Smart City Institute's Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And also the videos will be posted on the Smart City Institute Japan's YouTube channel, and also the materials as well. And also you will receive the questionnaires after this event, so please answer. so that we can utilize for the future webinar. And today is here. And also in October, we will have a Fireware. And also in November, we have European Smart City Inspired Week, and there are more coming, so please stay tuned. And this is about Smart City Institute Japan, and I will go just briefly. We have 36 advisors and members of 460 now. It's growing. And I think full membership of 82 and supporting member of 370, including local governments, over 200. And our members, including global partners organization, is growing as well. So anyway, thank you very much for viewing today. And we hope to see you soon again. Thank you very much. And please have a nice day.
Thank you very much. Bye now.